As I sat beside my dying grandfather in the hospital, my father mortgaged my home to help my sister. When I returned, he said, "She needed it more than you." I put on my jacket and calmly replied, "Then don't blame me for what happens next." There are some moments in life that hit you so hard, they rearrange your entire world. For me, that moment wasn't a sudden disaster, but a slow, insidious creep of betrayal. A betrayal orchestrated by the very people I loved most. What would you do if you discovered your own family had secretly mortgaged your house? The home you diligently worked for, the one you painstakingly paid for, all without your knowledge or consent. That's precisely what happened to me, and it irrevocably changed everything. My name is Daniel. I'm 33. If our family were a sprawling production, I'd always been the quiet architect of order, making sure the mics worked backstage. The spreadsheet kid who matured into the spreadsheet adult. I'm the calm one, the one with jumper cables, the guy who knows precisely which cabinet holds the light bulbs. My sister, Leia, though, she's always been the main act. The undeniable star. I was merely the sound check, and for a long time, honestly, that was perfectly fine. I don't crave spotlights. I prefer things functioning seamlessly. I own a small, two-bedroom house on the quiet edge of town. I take pride in fixing my own leaky faucets, meticulously labeling my breaker box, and keeping extra batteries in a clear bin because, let's be real, chaos often begins with a dead remote. My job at the community college isn't glamorous, but I genuinely enjoy it. Students call me sir, and I still feign surprise, a small, private joke. The day this all began, I was in a sterile hospital room with my grandfather. Machines breathed for him in slow, steady whooshes, and the clock on the wall ticked with a frantic urgency, as if it had somewhere far more important to be. I'd slept on a rigid vinyl chair for 2 nights, my arms crossed over a jean jacket that still carried the faint, comforting scent of laundry soap from a rushed wash. I held his hand, offering a steady stream of updates on the Cardinals game, because routine, in that moment, felt like a small mercy. My phone, face down on the rolling tray beside lukewarm ginger ale and plastic cups, kept buzzing with unknown numbers. I silenced it. I poured water for my grandmother, walked her to the window and back. We spoke of nothing of consequence, by mutual, unspoken agreement. When she finally drifted asleep, I cautiously checked my phone. 3 voicemails, all from a number labeled County Title Services. No one, I knew instinctively, ever calls you from a title office with good news. I placed the phone back down. My brain, stretched thin and exhausted, had room for only one crisis, and it wasn't some random, abstract paperwork. At noon, my father walked in, 2 coffees in hand, radiating that tall, nervous energy I'd recognized since his forced enjoyment of my Little League games. He kissed Grandma's forehead, squeezed my shoulder, and then pulled me into the hallway, past the incessant vending machines. "You look tired," he observed. "I am," I admitted. He glanced at my phone. "Put that away. Today's not a day for paperwork." I didn't say anything about paperwork. I replied, a little defensive, the exhaustion making me brittle. "Good," he said, correcting himself swiftly, "because your sister has a lot on her plate. We all have a lot on our plates." A nurse rattled a cart past us, and Dad lowered his voice. After this, he said, the implication hanging heavy, after the hospital, after my grandfather died in a room filled with plastic plants. "Let's talk." Nothing dramatic, just some family logistics. Now, I pressed because I recognized that look, the one that meant he was about to drop a burden in my lap and then call me defensive when I tried to hand it back. "Not now," he insisted. "Later. Don't start. Be generous," he said, in the same tone some people used to say, "Be quiet." Back in the room, my aunt leaned over the bed, whispering a prayer. Dad handed me a coffee. It was sweet, the way Mom drinks it, not how I take mine. He looked at the machines, the rhythmic whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. "We're lucky to have each other," he murmured, his eyes fixed on the monitor. "Not me. Your sister needs us. Don't make everything a debate." I didn't answer. The first trigger wasn't a fight. It was that sentence, landing like a folded note slid across a desk. Asterisk, be generous. Don't make it a debate. Asterisk, I placed the unwelcome coffee on the tray, took my grandfather's hand again, and watched the clock keep telling on us. See, I didn't wake up one day and discover this mess. It was a slow drip, a steady erosion. Leia had been golden for birth. Yearbooks, pep rallies, people remembering her birthday without Facebook. My assigned role at home was to carry the cooler and somehow also be invisible while I carried it. At 19, she blew a tire leaving a party, nails in the road, she'd claimed. I Venmo'd the tow guy because he only took one card. At 21, she lost her wallet at a music festival and called me crying in the rain. I drove an hour and paid for the motel because she had no ID and they were being mean. At 25, she attempted a candle shop on Etsy. I crafted her a simple budget and a silly logo in an afternoon. She sent me a scented sample and left the spreadsheet unopened. When I inquired how she planned to cover inventory, she simply said, "You always figure out." Our parents, in their own way, enabled this dynamic. Dad runs a small contracting crew, knows every tool brand by its sound. Mom gardens like she's auditioning for a magazine that will never call. They love us, of course. They love Leia out loud, with effusive praise and tangible support. They love me quietly and consistently asked me to be understanding whenever that quiet felt like a bruise. When I was 25, I bought my house. Dad insisted on being on the title to lock a better rate, and because one day we'll do a family trust and it'll be easier. I trusted him implicitly. We never quite got around to that trust. Work, holidays, Leia's unending emergencies. It remained a line on a deed we both shared. There were other, smaller humiliations that piled up, growing into towering burdens. Mom would hand me a bill, just this once. Dad would ask me to float payroll for his crew, 2 days max. Leia used my Amazon account, sending me a picture of a ring light with a caption for the brand. If I hesitated, someone would label me rigid. If I dared to follow up, someone would say, "We're family, not a bank." 3 months ago, Leia decided to open a wellness studio. Not a gym, not a spa, but something ethereal in between, filled with plants and neon. She had a Pinterest board, a lease she adored, and a landlord who needed a confident yes. She needed a deposit, build-out funds, equipment, numbers that felt like massive shoes to fill. "I can't," I said, "because sometimes you just can't. My mortgage, my roof, a water heater that sometimes groaned a little. These were my responsibilities." I offered to scrutinize cash flow, explore equipment lease options, locate used machines that were still perfectly functional. She rolled her eyes. "God, you're so administrative." Dad simply said, "We'll figure it out." In the weeks that followed, figured out slowly transmuted into little pings of dread. A bank email. "Your mailing address has been updated." A text from Dad. "Need your insurance binder for the house. Just to double check." A group chat where Mom wrote, "Proud of us for coming together." When I asked, Dad dismissed it as just housekeeping, nothing heavy. And also, don't be dramatic. So, when those voicemails from County Title Services arrived at the hospital, I didn't listen. My grandfather, his quiet dignity fading, mattered infinitely more than my inbox. But the sentences Dad had dropped in my ear, asterisk be generous. Don't make it a debate, asterisk. They looped, a relentless echo, while the machine breathed in the corner like a tired animal. Grandpa died Wednesday morning. He went quietly, just as he'd always wanted. We handled the paperwork, hugged with a strange, disconnected emptiness, and then drove home in that stunned, floaty silence where every traffic light feels too bright. I walked into my house after 3 days steeped in hospital smell and found 2 envelopes on a mat. One from a bank I already used, one from a bank I didn't. I hung my jacket, fed the cat, took a shower that ran too hot, then sat at the table with a towel on my head, feeling strangely younger than my years, and opened the envelopes as if they might be birthday cards. "Welcome to your new home equity line of credit," the first one cheerfully announced. It listed a credit limit, a variable APR, and an initial advance for $68,000, funded to third-party escrow. The second envelope was thinner. "County Recorder Confirmation," it read. A deed of trust recorded against your address. My own address. I stared at my name. I stared at the amount. My hands went cold in a way that felt like my bones remembered winter. I called Dad. He answered on the second ring, as if he'd been waiting, line half dialed. Breathe, he said first, as if I'd already started yelling, though I hadn't spoken a word yet. We handled it. What is it? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The house, the equity, he said, a cheerfulness in his tone that made my shoulders instinctively rise. We used a line. It's smart money. Interest is low. Leia needed it to close the lease. You mortgaged my house, I said, the words sounding fake even to my own ears. While I was at the hospital. Come on. Our house, he corrected quickly. I'm on the title, too. It was time that property did something for the family. Your sister needs a push. This is an investment, Daniel. You didn't ask me. I stated, the words heavy and deliberate. He sighed into the phone, as if I were somehow late to something we'd already agreed upon. If I asked, you would have made a whole thing of it. This is why I didn't tell you until it was done. She needed it more than you. There it was. That sentence. It landed so flat I almost laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. I looked around my kitchen at the cheap clock, the scuffed chair, the silent list of small things I'd said yes to my whole life, and felt the word more slide like a drawer that stuck until you pulled harder. How much? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. 68 to start, he said. Then a draw schedule as she hits milestones. We'll cover the interest from the business until it stands up. It's a family project. No, I said, my voice steady, just like when I tell students to push the power button and hold for 10 seconds. It's my house. Daniel, he said, gentle now, that voice that used to make me feel like a good son. Don't make me the bad guy for doing what's best for your sister. She's got timing. You've got stability. We're balancing. I looked at the cat. He blinked. My towel dripped water onto my shoulder. My jacket hung heavy on the hook. When did you sign? Yesterday. Don't spiral. Go get some sleep. We'll come by after dinner. Your mother already made a casserole. He hung up. He hung up on me, as if this was settled. I put my head down on the table for a second and listened to the house. The fridge hummed. The faucet dripped once, then remembered itself. The cat scratched at the mat, as if practicing to leave. I checked the bank mailer again. There was a sentence on the second page about a right to cancel within 3 business days. I read it twice. I could hear Dad's voice layered over the print. Asterisk, be generous. Don't make it a debate. Asterisk, Leia texted a glittering photo of an empty storefront with a caption, key day, and a row of hearts. I put my phone face down. I went to the bedroom. I took down the shoebox with the deed copies inside, the ones the closing paralegal had handed me years ago with a smile that said, you did a grown-up thing today. I opened it, sat on the floor, and noticed an extra paper tucked behind the manila tabs where I hadn't left it. My father's handwriting neat. He'd labeled it line info with a black pen underlined twice. My grandfather had died 7 hours before. My father had freshly mortgaged my house for the family. He called it balancing. He called me generous preemptively. He'd assumed I would stay quiet. He was almost right. I called a meeting. That's how my brain works. Calendar first, chaos later. Group text, 5:02 p.m. My place, 7:30, non-negotiable. Mom sent a heart emoji. Dad wrote, we're not fighting about this. Leia wrote, I have a walkthrough at 7 o'clock. I replied, then come at 8. Before they arrived, I made a list. I always do better with lists. I printed the welcome letter, the deed copy, my mortgage statement, and the crucial line in the brochure about the right to cancel before midnight on the 3rd business day. I called the bank and asked practical questions in the same calm, measured voice I'd used to reset a router. The woman on the phone was kind, in a way that felt like a step stool in a high cupboard. When my family came through my door, they brought 2 distinct kinds of air, perfume and sawdust, and the sweet, suffocating heaviness of what we were about to do to each other. Mom placed foil pans on the counter like a shield. We brought dinner, she said brightly. Sit, I said. My voice surprised me. It was steady enough to carry a box. Dad looked around my house, appraising, as he always does. Leia made a beeline for my mirror and adjusted her hair. I placed the papers on the table and pointed to the sentence about rescission. I'm canceling the line. I said. Silence, then a math of its own. You could feel everyone trying to calculate how much of that sentence was bluff. Dad broke first. Don't. You'll embarrass me. The broker is a friend. I'm not interested in your friend's feelings, I said, or your timeline, or being the quiet hero while you announce business plans on Facebook. Leia laughed, a brittle sound, like she couldn't help it. You're being so dramatic. It's leverage. We needed to move fast. You took my roof and called it leverage. I shot back, the anger finally bubbling over, hot and unbidden. It's our roof, Dad said again, stubborn. I'm on the paper. Don't act like you built this alone. I didn't, I said. I also didn't agree to pawn it for a neon sign. Mom put a hand on my arm. Honey, your sister is finally doing something. Don't kick her knees. I'm not, I replied. I'm taking my house back. Dad jaw worked. You always were small about money. I'm precise, I said, meeting his gaze. There's a difference. Leia crossed her arms. You love rules. Here's a rule. Family helps. You have stability. I have ambition. Dad made a call, I said. I said Dad made a theft. And now I'm making a boundary. I picked up my phone. I had already called. I had documented. I had the case number written on a sticky note, just like I write extension cord lengths on tape. The bank confirmed. I have until midnight tomorrow to cancel. I'm doing it. The lien will be released. Any draws after that will be fraudulent. If you try them, we'll have a different conversation, and it won't be at this table. Dad stood. You would do that to your own sister. You already did something to your own son. I countered. He pointed at me the way he did when I was 10 and left the rake outside. You think this is revenge? You want to hurt us because we didn't tell you. I shook my head. This isn't about revenge. This is about closure. They all blinked, as if the light had suddenly changed. Closure? Mom repeated, confused, as if I'd used a word from a distant channel. Closing the hole where my life leaks out. I said, my voice resonating with a new kind of power. Closing the account where my house funds someone else's lease. Closing the storyline where I'm generous so I could be allowed to stay. I slid a second paper across the table. A simple agreement. I drafted it in plain language. No more shared cards. No more automatic assumptions. If Dad wanted to stay on the title, we'd draft a real trust with real rules. If not, he'd sign a quitclaim. I'd refinance in 6 months with a different lender. Leia would not use my address, my account, or my signature for anything, ever. Pick, I said. Title with terms, or no title at all. Either way, the line is gone. Leia's mouth moved like she had a dozen words queued, and none of them worked. I'll miss the lease window. I believe you, I said. I'm not the window. Dad grabbed the papers and didn't really look at them. He looked at me, and in his face was that old thing. Pride and irritation braided together like a rope we were both tired of holding. You'll regret this, he said. Not a threat, a prophecy. Maybe, I replied, a calm certainty settling over me. But at least it'll be mine. I walked to the sink. I ran water. It hissed a little. I was still holding my phone. I didn't need to press anything. I'd already sent what needed to be sent. We stood there in the same room, related and suddenly very far apart. And for the first time in years, I felt taller in my own house. It was loud, then it was loud in silence. An hour after they left, the missed calls stacked up. Dad, then Leia, then Mom, then private numbers. Texts rolled in like weather. Don't do this. Too late to cancel. You owe us a conversation. You owe your sister a chance. You owe. I made rice. I ate on the counter with a spoon out of the pot like a teenager. I didn't answer anything for 2 hours. At 10:31 p.m., I called the bank again, repeated the case number, confirmed the rescission letter had uploaded. The rep said, "You're within your rights," in a tone that wasn't triumphant, just grounded. I said, "Thank you," too many times. By morning, there were 29 missed calls. By lunch, 57. By dinner, 83. Leia sent a long text, broken into lines for drama. You don't understand timing. The build-out crew is lined up. I told everyone we're funded. You're humiliating me. Do you want me to fail? I stared at the phone until the text bubble faded. I typed, I want you to separate me from your plans. Then I put the phone face down like a lid. Dad left a voicemail with that scolding sadness he wears like a sweater. You went nuclear. This could have been quiet. That line was a bridge. You burned it. You think houses and papers are more important than your sister's life. I played it twice. He made it sound like I was the one who had changed something fundamental. Maybe I had. Mom called and left a different message. Honey, your father is beside himself. Leia hasn't stopped crying. You did this wrong. You're so good with systems. Why didn't you find a way to make the bank thing work and make everyone happy? I thought about that sentence structure. Make the bank thing work and make everyone happy. I put the phone by the sink and scrubbed a pan like it had personally insulted me. Around 5, Leia showed up. She has a way of knocking like the building owes her a favor. I opened the door just enough to be polite. Let me in, she demanded. We can talk here, I said. Her eyes were red, mascara smudged into a smoky glare. You're cruel. I'm consistent, I replied. You don't get it, she said, her voice rising. This was my shot. Dad finally believed in me. He always believed in you, I said, just not with his own collateral. She flinched, then straightened. Fine, you win. We'll get the money somewhere else. You don't need to tell me how, I said, and I meant it like a favor, not a dig. She took 2 steps back and did the thing she did when we were kids. Made a wide circle with her hands, as if drawing a line around herself, and I wasn't allowed to step inside. You will regret this, she said, trying on Dad's prophecy like a coat that didn't quite fit yet. Maybe, I said, unwavering, but I'll regret it in my house. She left. My hands were shaking, and I was still sure, both at once. That night, I pulled out my file box. I made copies, title, mortgage, insurance, HOA. I put the originals in a fireproof envelope, then the envelope in a backpack, then the backpack in my car. I changed my online banking password and turned off paperless statements. I made a folder called Legal and added what I had. I Googled a real estate attorney, reading reviews like I was picking a toaster, and sent an email with bullet points. I wrote one line at the bottom. I want to set a boundary without burning the house down. It made me smile, even though none of this was funny. Grandpa's funeral was Saturday. Black suits, tissue boxes. Leia avoided me as if I were a camera and she was having a bad day. Dad's eulogy had the line I knew he'd use. Family is everything. People nodded. He looked at me when he said it. I looked at the flowers and thought about how much of my life had been paid in that currency. After the service, he cornered me near the coat rack. You canceled, he said. Not a question. I did. They'll release the lien this week. That's what they said. He breathed through his nose, then said quietly, You made it hard. You made it legal. I said. Let's not get stuck on the adjectives. He stared at his shoes. I shouldn't have done it like that. It wasn't quite an apology. It was a creak in the right direction. I let it stand on its shaky legs. At home that night, I slept. Not well, but better. I dreamed about a door I could lock without someone else's key on the outside of it. On Monday, the attorney called back. We talked for 20 minutes in simple sentences. He didn't do the thing where he performed vocabulary. He said, You're okay. And yes, Dad had standing to open it, but not to draw without my consent. You did the right thing quickly. He told me how to document, how to send a letter that sounded like me, but counted in a file. He told me how to remove Dad from the title without starting a war in public. He used the word boundaries like he meant it for a deed, not a relationship. It felt correct. I wrote Dad an email, not a text. Emails were ties. I wrote what happened, what I did, what I needed. I gave 2 options, trust with rules or quit claim and refinance. I gave soft timelines. I gave him my attorney's name and said, You're welcome to have counsel. I wrote one simple line in the middle in bold. You will not use my home as collateral again. He didn't answer for 2 days. The silence grew edges, then softened. On the 3rd day, he sent it, All right. I'll sign off the title. I shouldn't be in charge of your roof. It was the nicest sentence he'd ever sent me. It still stung. Both can be true. Leia sent a different kind of message. A photo of a smaller storefront in a strip mall with a vacancy sign. Plan B, she wrote. Then after a minute, this one is ugly. Then, but I can't afford the deposit. Then, can you help me read the lease? Not money, just eyes. I sat with it. I said yes. A boundary isn't an exile. We spent an hour on FaceTime, going clause by clause. When she said, "I'll just skim the middle," I said, "That's where the traps are," and made her read anyway. She sent a thumbs up. She didn't ask for my card. Mom took longer. She texted pictures of casseroles she didn't bring over. A week later, she called and spoke like a woman down a long hallway. "I don't know how to do this with you." "Do what?" I asked. "Not ask you," she said. "You can ask me," I said. "You just can't assume." She exhaled, and the sound was older than both of us. "You sound like a man I didn't raise." "I sound like a man who finally heard what you meant," I said, and she didn't hang up. The lien release came in the mail, crisp and boring in a way I wanted to frame. I put it in the box. I replaced the batteries in my smoke detectors because rituals matter. I made spaghetti and ate it on the couch with a towel tucked in my collar like a child. It was quiet in my house, not empty. Quiet. The calls slowed. The texts stopped sounding like sirens. I kept waking up early, like my life was a room with a window I'd finally opened, and the air was new enough to keep me from sleeping too late. On Friday, I stood in my tiny backyard and watered the one tomato plant I keep alive every year out of sheer stubbornness. I wanted it to fruit just once. The cat sat in the window, judging. Dad called. I let it ring 3 times, then picked up. "We signed the paperwork," he said. "Your lawyer will get a copy." "Thank you," I said. He cleared his throat. "I hate that we did this to you." "I didn't say you did this to me." I said, "I'm glad we're not doing it anymore." He made a noise that could have been a laugh if it had more vitamins. "Your sister says you helped with the lease." I read words. She read them, too. He paused. "You always were good at reading small print." "I'm learning to write it," I said. We hung up. I watered the plant again, even though the soil didn't need it. Sometimes you keep doing the motion until your body believes you. I'm not telling this like a court case because I don't need a verdict. I needed a door that locked from the inside. I have one now. I changed small things. I labeled 2 calendar blocks a week no and kept them sacred. I moved my emergency fund to a bank my family doesn't know exists. I took Dad off the spare key ring and gave it to my neighbor who feeds my cat when I travel. I told Leia I'll read contracts but not sign them. I told Mom I'll eat her lasagna, but not her guilt. Leia found a cheaper space. It has fluorescent lights and ugly tile. She posted a photo with a caption that said, "We start small," and I tapped the heart and didn't add $1. Dad stopped calling me from rooms where decisions were already made. He started calling earlier when things were still drafts. Sometimes I say yes, sometimes I say no. Both answers get to be love. Grandpa's hat hangs by my door. I put it there because it reminds me that men in my family carry things with their hands and also with their mouths, and I can put some of it down. He worked until he couldn't. He also told me once, when I was 8, handed me a wrench, "If you break something fixing it, you were the only one trying." I think about that when I'm tempted to make my boundaries perfect before I make them real. Here's the moral, simple enough to write on a sticky note and stick above the sink. I won't let anyone mortgage my house, my time, or my attention without asking, ever again. If I'm not in the room when the pen hits the paper, my name won't be on the page. If I'm not invited to decide, I'm not responsible to pay. This isn't cruelty. It's clarity. This isn't revenge. It's closure. I'm building a life where the lights come on because I flipped the switch, not because I said yes until the wire burned. My name is Daniel. I still label the bins. I still fix what I can reach. The difference is that I no longer pretend I'm a utility the family can tap like a wall outlet. I'm a person. I own 4 walls and a roof and a door that closes. And when someone I love stands outside asking for all of it, I can open the door a little, talk through the crack, and say, in a voice that doesn't shake, "No." So I'm curious. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever had to draw a hard line with family to protect yourself? Let me know in the comments below.